I'm Mark Halperin.
I'm John Heilemann, and with all due respect to Bill Clinton, who says he's waiting for marijuana growers to invite him to speak, you can come speak with me anytime you want. Happy National Iced Tea Day, sports fans. And our lineup tonight, the big dogs bark, Rodham's risk, and Jeb's jousting with the press. But first, President Obama is sending 450, count them, 450 more American troops to train the Iraqi military in its fight to take back Ramadi from the Islamic State. The White House says these are not combat troops, and today denied that the added forces are a sign of either a change in strategy or mission creep.
The president's been clear about what's not on the table, and that is a large-scale ground combat operation inside of Iraq. And the reason the president has ruled out that option is the president does not believe it is in the national security interest of the United States for us to do for the Iraqis what they must do for themselves.
All right, Mark. So what are we to make of today's announcement, and what do you think the potential implications for 2016 might be?
It's rare for a government at war to ever say we're changing our strategy. Saw George Bush do it, but this president doesn't want to fight a war in Iraq, but he's sending more troops in. Looks like mission creep to me, and it also looks like there are going to be American troops there for a good long time. The bottom line remains the Iraqis cannot seem to fight this war themselves. Administration policy is they must, and yet this is another sign that the administration doesn't think they can whenever there's anything critical, including getting the warring factions within the Iraqi government to get along.
It's a huge problem. I think that it doesn't look like mission creep to me quite so much, in the sense that the mission remains the same, to try to fight off the Islamic State. That is still the mission. What has happened, obviously, is that not only has Mosul fallen, but Ramadi has now fallen. There is a big thing that's happened now, where the fight to take back Ramadi has now displaced the focus on the fight to take back Mosul. But I think the president still is in the same place, which is to say no combat troops, and we're still all about training the Iraqis. That may turn out to be a fool's errand, but he's not giving ground on, he's not doing what Republicans want him to do, which is say, let's get a bigger force in there and fight this war ourselves.
This looks exactly like the thing that neither George Bush nor Barack Obama ever wanted to do, whack-a-mole. Right. They're basically putting in more troops whenever there's a new problem to try to knock it down. And I think American people should be skeptical that this is too Goldilocks. It's not enough to change things, but it's enough to keep America involved in the war in a big way.
All right. Okay. Today in the Wall Street Journal, former Bill Clinton advisor and new Democratic apostle Bill Galston argues that it's not enough for Hillary Clinton to try to reassemble the Obama coalition of the ascendant. That's minorities, white liberals, and young voters. Galston maintains that it is essential for Clinton to broaden her appeal beyond the Democratic base, aiming at undecided voters and trying to win back groups such as working-class whites by presenting herself as a government reformer. Mark, question for you, this straightforward. Will Hillary Clinton follow Bill Galston, an important man in Bill Clinton's administration? Will she follow his advice?
Tough for her to do. She doesn't have the demeanor of a reformer. She's trying very hard to win over liberals in a way that doesn't allow her to be the kind of reformer that takes on people in both parties, which her husband did. Right. And I don't see an appetite within her campaign to do things risky. And being a reformer is risky. So I think probably if you look at Obama, Clinton, Bush, all ran as reformers, all did well. McCain was the most popular politician in America for almost a decade as a reformer. I don't see it in the cards, but I think Bill Galston's right. Her chances of not only winning, but governing big are greater if she runs as a reformer.
I mean, look, you think about, when Barack Obama won in 2008, he had about 356 electoral votes. When he ran in 2012, he was down to 332 or something like that. So the margin got smaller, and it got harder to govern. I mean, he had a Democratic Congress, obviously, in the first term. But if she does only what they're setting out to do right now, which is a recipe for victory, it's a recipe for victory, but it's probably a recipe for victory with even fewer electoral votes, and that can't make, as you point out, it can't make governing easier to have fewer electoral votes than Barack Obama did, and we know how much trouble he had in his first two terms.
The four most likely Republican presidential nominees, John Kasich, Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, Scott Walker, if they're the nominees, will all run as reformers.
Right. Well, different kind of reformer.
Different kind of reformers, but still as reformers. All right. In other Clinton news, our colleague Betty Lou today interviewed Bill Clinton at CGI America. The conference was in Denver, where the former president gave a full-throated defense of the Clinton Foundation, its work, and he said its lack of politicalness.
90% of what anybody complained about now was known about when she ran before, and no one went after the foundation, at least not to this extent. I'm happy to answer the questions, but I think and have disclosure. But it ought to be a two-way street. There's never been a more, I don't believe, foundation with a prominent political person involved in it like me. They've been more non-political. I've had George and Laura Bush here, Mitt Romney, John McCain, and Sarah Palin came. One of my Republican supporters who has not yet been subject to public criticism called me the other day and he said, here's the message I get from all this coverage. If I put my money in a tax shelter in the Cayman Islands and don't pay taxes, I'm a great man. If I give my money to one of these black box committees where you never have to reveal the contributors, I'll never get any grief. If I publicly give my money to you to help poor people, there's something really wrong with me. Has anybody proved that we did anything objectionable? No. Have we done a lot of good things with this money? Yes. And I think in the end, the foundation will stand or fall on the work it does.
President Clinton was also asked about what the future would look like if Hillary Clinton becomes the POTUS.
I believe if you have been president and the current president of either party asks you to do anything, if in good conscience you can do it, you should do it. That will be not an easy decision, should she be elected president. I mean, she'll have to decide what's my highest and best use. One thing she knows more about than anybody on earth, it's on what subjects I should be listened to and what subjects I shouldn't.
He also said if she's elected president, he's going to stop giving paid speeches, which have obviously been a big source of controversy. Classic Clinton in a lot of ways.
In many ways.
What caught your ear in those foundation defenses?
The defiance, the soft defiance, right? He doesn't stamp his feet, he doesn't beat his chest, but he basically is saying we haven't done anything wrong. You got to trust us. In the end, it's all when it all comes out in the wash. We've done good work, and it's all politics. That's what you hear that throughout this thing today, which is that this is just politics. You got to write it all off. It's not a big deal. It's just what it is. That I think is where he has been throughout this thing, and I think he might be like that through. I mean, unless there is some change in the facts that come out, and he has to address this in a more straightforward way, this could be his posture throughout the entire campaign.
On the one hand, he's right about the Clinton Foundation and people who charge that it's exclusively set up to advance the political causes of the Clintons is ridiculous.
Or enrich them.
But he did not address some of the specifics today. And on generalities, he's on strong ground, but some of the specifics are still coming. But I was impressed by how calm he was.
Yes.
Because this stuff we know privately has had him seething over the criticism of the foundation and the fact that he does believe it's all political. But I thought today, as compared to in Africa,
yes,
when he was a little bit off key, I thought today he did himself a lot of good. And those talking points and that tone is what will help both Clintons get through the additional questions that are still coming.
Well, it's a good thing he stayed away. The thing in Africa that he screwed up on was he, again, talked down their degree of wealth. Oh, I got to do this to pay the bills. When he stays away from their personal wealth, he's in pretty good shape because at bottom, he believes his own spin. He believes that they are doing good work on balance.
Yeah. All right. Today in the Euro Trip Journal, Jeb Bush has completed the German portion of his sojourn, and he's now in Poland. Tomorrow he's going to meet with that country's president and the incoming president. Before he left Berlin, however, Bush took questions from the American media and was asked about two adversarial forces currently in his world. One, Vladimir Putin, the other, the personnel changes that have happened within his campaign in waiting. Here's how Bush answered the question about why he is going to make Danny Diaz his campaign manager instead of Iowa strategist Dave Kochel, Bush's original choice.
This is an adjustment based on the skills of people that I got to know during the last 3 months. And next Monday, I'll announce what my decision is. I'm excited about it, and I have a really good team.
What was it about what was happening, though, in your lead-up that said to you, I need to make some changes?
Nothing other than just the magnitude of the journey. It's a pretty overwhelming challenge, and so I decided to kind of split up the duties.
So on Putin, Bush was asked if previous administrations had made mistakes in dealing with the Russian leader.
I think Putin has changed. He just invaded another country. That was different than it was a decade ago. This is a different This is a different Putin, much more aggressive. So, look, I don't begrudge anybody trying to develop better relationships with any country, but it's clear that in this particular case, the much heralded reset didn't work out.
So those are the two topics that dominate his press availability today: the question of Putin and how to deal with Putin, question of why he made this change at the top of his campaign. Did he sound convincing to you that he can beat back Putin if he's president? And the more immediate concern that he's going to launch his campaign with a structure that makes sense.
Does he sound like he's having any fun to you?
Joyous? He looked all right.
It doesn't look like he's having that much fun to me.
He is taking questions.
Yeah, he's taking questions. I'm for him taking questions. I thought, the first answer was kind of gobbledygook. The Putin answer, I actually kind of think that made a fair amount of sense. Obviously, Putin is a much more complicated problem, as hard as it is to run a campaign. The shakeup in the campaign at this early stage doesn't trouble me. I mean, it doesn't make me think the campaign's about to go off the rails. It'd be very premature to say that. I think, I think struck a pretty decent tone on Putin, which is to say tough, resolute, but he's not been taking egregious shots at President Obama or at Hillary Clinton, for that matter. I think he's been okay on that front.
Yeah, and on this issue, he at least has something that sounds sensible, which is when his brother was president, Putin was behaving in a different way, obviously doing nothing as provocative as he's done in the last year in Crimea and dealing with Ukraine. So I think on this one, more than other issues, I think he sounds like he's got a good fingertip feel for what he'd do, even if I'm sure others would take issue with the policies he's proposed.
I wish he wouldn't do that little shrug thing, though, that he does in the middle of some of these questions, because it makes it...
Classic Jeb.
I know. It's just not a lot of gravitas there. Remember, everybody, speaking of Jeb Bush, the man is expected to officially announce his candidacy on Monday. We'll be streaming the speech live on our website at 3 p.m. Eastern. Mark will be anchoring that thing from Miami, and I'll be here in New York. Coming up, what are Hillary Clinton's biggest vulnerabilities? The answer from the Bernie Sanders campaign senior advisor after this.
Our guest tonight works for a monster, at least someone who does an imitation of a lovable monster. Tad Devine, senior advisor to Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign, has worked in the past on presidential campaigns with Al Gore, John Kerry, and Michael Dukakis. Tad, thanks for coming in. Appreciate it. What's the state of the Sanders campaign now?
I think it's very good. I think, we got off to a great start. We had a terrific launch in Burlington 2 weeks ago. He's gone on to Iowa and New Hampshire since then, had incredible crowds. I think people have seen the enormous crowds that are turning out for his events. We're raising a lot of money online with small contributions, an average contribution under $40. The campaign's beginning to hire people in Iowa and New Hampshire, and also building a national campaign out of Burlington, Vermont. So I think the state of the campaign is very good.
Tad, as you know, Mark and I have both been taking Bernie pretty seriously and have noted the state of Bernie mania on the show on several occasions. But I think it's fair to say that neither one of us has a clear idea about what his actual path to the nomination would be. What would it be?
Well, listen, first we begin by recognizing that we have a very formidable opponent in Hillary Clinton. She is going to have enormous support across the Democratic Party. She's done this before. She's demonstrated her strength with voters. I think Bernie's path is to go out at the beginning of this process, beginning in Iowa and New Hampshire, and to bring people in, to demonstrate to them that he is a very strong candidate, that his message, which centers around three big issues: the inequality of wealth in America, the need to deal with climate change urgently, and also the threat to democracy itself that Citizens United fundraising and financing of campaigns presents. I think if that message resonates with people and they are convinced that he can be a very strong messenger, not just in a primary process but in a general election, they'll start to come to him. He'll rise. He'll be the alternative to her. And if we can begin to beat her in those early contests, I think we have a real shot at it.
If he has that kind of success, would you expect that forces supporting Hillary Clinton will come after Senator Sanders in a negative way?
I do expect that. I mean, she's going to have the super PACs on her side, or a super PAC.
What do you think they'll come after him on, Ted? What issues or personal stuff?
I think certainly issues. I mean, Bernie has taken positions on issues. I think they'll try to dig up everything he wrote 40 or 50 years ago in every small newspaper in Vermont and put it in front of people. I think they will look at his record. I mean, listen, in the Senate race in 2006. His opponent, Rich Tarrant, a Republican, ran a series of vicious negative attacks against Bernie. They isolated votes that he made in the Congress. They said he was out of step with the mainstream.
You think if Hillary Clinton's forces attack him, it'll weaken him or make him stronger?
Well, I think it depends on how we handled it. And, you know, one of the reasons that Bernie has never run a negative ad is early in his career he became convinced that voters are sick of that kind of politics. I think if he's attacked, we will respond in this campaign as we did in the Senate race, not by counterattacking, but by pointing out to voters that, you know, Bernie's not going to engage in that kind of politics. And that kind of politics is one of the reasons that American government doesn't work anymore. So if we're attacked, we'll deal with it.
Tad, you pointed out that Hillary is a formidable candidate in places like Iowa, New Hampshire, and elsewhere. What do you see, and what does Bernie see as some of her biggest vulnerabilities politically?
Well, listen, I don't think we're not going to run a campaign against her, okay? We're not going to attack her on TV. You know, we will compare records. I mean, for example, on the Iraq War, you know, Bernie was a member of Congress. He voted against it. She was a member of Congress. She voted for it. I mean, there are going to be issues. Now, with the TPP, for example, Bernie is strongly against it. We're not sure what her position is. On the pipeline, Bernie's strongly against it. We're not sure what her position is. So there will be differences on issues, and he will stand up and he will articulate his position. I don't see it in the traditional campaign sense of us attacking her on TV. We're not going to do that. But there will be a debate, a vigorous debate on issues.
But you're saying, I know that an attack is kind of in the eye of the beholder. I mean, you're not saying he's not going to shy away from making the contrast on an issues basis.
Yeah. That's right, but the focus of Bernie's campaign is not going to be Hillary Clinton. Yeah. And I know, despite her standing and her incredible standing right now within the party, that may sound somewhat naive.
Tad,
but there's no way for us to win by running against her.
We just have a few seconds left. You know a lot of Democrats. You talk to a lot of people who support the Clintons. Yes or no? Do you think the Clintons are worried and maybe even afraid of the strength of Bernie Sanders?
At this stage, probably no. But we hope soon that will become yes. So we'll see.
Okay. Tad Devine, thanks very much. We'll talk to you more again as we go forward here. We appreciate it. Up next, from the 2016 race to race relations, and the man who's got every answer imaginable, Colin Quinn, after this.
Race relations, it's a touchy subject, but somebody's got to touch it. Thankfully, that somebody is not us, but rather our guest, Colin Quinn. He's written The Coloring Book, A Comedian Solves Race Relations in America. His BFF, Jerry Seinfeld, calls it gorgeous, hilarious, and brilliant. Chris Rock says, quote, this book is like Roots, but with more jokes, and that Quinn is the white Richard Pryor. Colin, thanks for coming on the show. Nobody's off limits in your book. You're an equal opportunity offender. So tell us, please, what is the state of race relations in America?
Well, I mean, right now, it's really just people say that we're going to have a discussion. But it's really a discussion about having a discussion at this point. Because, you know, people are worried, justifiably so, of course, because if you say the wrong thing, you get fired, boycotted, whatever. You know what I mean? So people are very cautious, very generic. They speak very generically, much like I'm speaking now, I realize, but that's the way it is.
And are you not worried about being fired or boycotted? Is that why your book is not afraid to speak
I don't really have
hard truths?
I don't really have employment for many years now, except stand-up.
Okay. Yeah, you can't get fired from that, or you can get boycotted, though.
You can get boycotted, but that would probably help at this point. The way I sold, you'd be embarrassed for me.
A lot of this book seems to be informed by your being raised in Brooklyn, which now Brooklyn is not nearly as racially diverse as it once was. I live in Williamsburg, which is like kind of like East Caucasia. But how does the Brooklyn of your childhood inform your view of race?
I mean, I guess because it's probably like I just remember, you know, like everybody remembers the happy parts of their childhood, but I just remember everyone kind of in school together, and like there was racial tension, or there was like racial, but everybody was mixed together at the same time. So you had people crossed over much more. It seemed like they were just forced to cross over by where people living in the same building, and just, you know, it was more of a mix, it felt like. But that was Park, so it was a rare place at a rare time.
Every author in a book has to make choices. You chose not to do pop-up, not to do scratch and sniff. Why?
I actually, as much as you may be kidding, I wanted to make it a coloring book. I told them I want to do like a graphic novel. And the editor was just like dismissing me every time. He goes, just stop saying that. And I was like, why? I thought graphic novels were like cool. And I like, you know, cartoons. They did one about the Holocaust, for God's sakes. Remember?
Yeah. All right, now you've got.
Remember?
Yeah, you've gotten to tell your share of jokes about the Clintons over the years, as most comics have. Are they too old and too much in terms of old story to still be funny, or are the Clintons still funny?
I mean, the only thing I find funny with Hillary is I feel like she's going to win because she doesn't care. She's just like, I don't care. I don't. And people give the first female, she's like, fine. She doesn't care. So I think that's when you win. When you don't care, that's when people want to give you everything. Okay. So, I mean, it's not really funny, but it's kind of an observation I had.
So which offers greater comic potential, a Clinton candidacy or a Bush candidacy?
Well, Bush, just the fact that I admire a man that goes up and goes, they say, what's your name? And he writes Jeb. Instead of just going Jeb and saying, that's it, just call me Jeb for the campaign. That he actually wrote Bush at the end. You got to admire that.
So we kind of go incognito.
Yeah, or just not make it not put it at the forefront of people's minds.
Like Hillary did, just Hillary.
Well, Hillary too, but in her case, you want to put Clinton in there.
All right, so we don't know yet whether Chris Christie is actually going to run for president.
Yeah, but Chris Christie's going to be it's going to be tough because now that fat shaming is the thing, people can't be making all those fat jokes about Chris Christie, right?
That's good for him.
Well, it's interesting because fat jokes about him like 4 years ago. He's like, he's fat, and now he's like, hey, fat shaming. So at some point, he's going to pull the fat card.
So you think it's like off limits now? You can't like make fun of him for his weight? I mean, he had some pictures from a baseball game the other day in a baseball uniform that some people made fun of.
I know. I'm saying he's going to have to be the one that goes, guys, I've had a weight problem. It's like you ever see John Candy in Planes, Trains? It's true. I have a weight problem. He's going to have to say that, and then he's going to be like, we can't even fat shame Chris Christie. Because he's the only one that anyone fat shames anymore, right?
All right, let's go back to this book. What's the message? What's the takeaway? Why does anybody besides us who just love the combination of race relations and comedy, why would anybody want to buy this book?
Why? I mean, just because we've tried. All I see, the racial dialogue I see is people either very angry or very placating and pandering. So let's try a little humor and see if it can break. It probably won't do anything, you know. It's not like anyone solves any problems in the world anyway, let's be honest at this point. This world's on its last legs, but I think that, I want to put in my little 2 cents too, you know.
So if this works out, world peace.
If this works out, better than world peace. Dictator, you know.
But over a benevolent dictator over United Kingdom.
A benevolent dictator with, occasional bloodshed like I'm a pragmatic benevolent dictator.
As needed. Some
people, yes. I like that.
You got any other ideas for books?
No, this is my first and last book. It was a torturous process. I'll never go through it. All my life people go, you should write a book. Well, guess what? I wrote one. It was the biggest mistake I've ever made. That doesn't mean I want people to buy it. But sometimes you buy something you can learn from a good mistake.
And if it's a #1 bestseller?
And they offer me a lot of money?
Yeah.
You'll see me. Hopefully I'll be on again. Hey, guys, you updated the crayons for me. Thanks. Yeah.
The book, the coloring book, that is Colin Quinn's new book. He also has a new one-man play, Colin Quinn, The New York Story, which is based on this book, the coloring book. The play is directed by Jerry Seinfeld, and it begins July 9th at the Cherry Lane Theater. Colin?
Guys, I'm sorry my director is a bigger name than me. Do you know how embarrassing that is? People are like, where's Jerry? He's not here.
Yeah,
absentee director.
Just out of curiosity, where is Jerry?
What's that?
The only reason we invited you on is because we thought you were bringing him with you.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, it's a little bit of a letdown.
I know.
Colin Quinn, you're awesome.
Thanks,
thank
guys.
you. We'll be right back. A breaking report in the Des Moines Register about what could be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Jennifer Jacobs says that on Friday, the governing board of the Republican Party of Iowa will decide if they should keep or kill the famed Iowa straw poll. So maybe, boom, goes the dynamite.
Rest of this week, we've got so many presidential candidates appearing on this program that we're calling it a tour de force. Santorum, Walker, Kasich, Graham, Romney, maybe more. Catch it all here Thursday and Friday. Remember, on twice a day at 5 and at 8. Until tomorrow, Tour de Force kicks off. Sayonara.